back to the John and Linetia show. John, have you ever worked in a fast food restaurant?
Too many evers. No, I've not ever worked in a fast.
You know anyone who has?
I've known people who've worked
Yeah.
in fast food. A lot of them won't eat the food that their places used to have.
Yeah.
How about you?
I've never worked in fast food ever. I've wanted to.
You know, there's a lot of jobs, a lot of fast food places, so there's got to be a lot of people working. And it was interesting a couple of weeks ago that McDonald's came out, unfortunately, with a hypothetical household budget for its restaurant employees. And ultimately, what it was trying to do was to kind of say, hey, you know what, working for McDonald's and getting minimum wage, you can still make ends meet. There was a lot of things wrong with the budget. You were going to spend no money on heat.
Right.
And it required you to have a second full-time job.
Oh.
So you had to be working 80 hours a week.
The obvious.
And you still weren't, really, it was like, I think actually health insurance was like something like $15, and the McDonald's health insurance is $25 a month. So it was pretty ridiculous, but it also focused on just really how cheap. I mean, when it comes to minimum wage, you look at it and you go, can anybody get by? Can a family get by? Can people get by on minimum wage? And when I was growing up, I remember, the minimum wage jobs were for students or second jobs. It was basically, I'm going to school, so I'm going to get a job here, and it was minimum wage. Or you had a full-time job and you wanted all, But the problem is that, the country has turned into a service economy as opposed to a production. So it's not like you have a lot of factory jobs anymore. And there's more and more of these service jobs. So there's more and more, whether it be fast food, whether it be retail type jobs. And the minimum wage has not kept up with inflation over the years. And ultimately, you're at a point when you are below the poverty level if you have 2 full-time minimum wage jobs.
Right.
And the big thing, people say, well, we can't raise the minimum wage because then things will cost more. So what? Because ultimately, what really, they say that, and then you look at, the company's profit margins, and you go, well, wait a minute, maybe instead of, making 80 cents on the dollar, you can make 70 cents on the dollar and give your workers some more money.
I always felt that way. Here we go, my life story. When I got out of college, I couldn't find a job, probably like everyone else's story. And I ended up working at one of our local retail stores. Okay? You know how much I was making? $5.25 an hour.
Yeah, no, I remember making that much.
And that was in 1996.
Yeah.
$5.25 an hour, and I was happy to have that job because I didn't have, anything else. But I couldn't move out of my parents' home. You cannot live on minimum wage unless you have a roommate.
Now, I remember when I was working at, when I was in college, in high school and college, I was working at a venture store, and I started making...
Did you just say venture?
Venture. It was $5.25 an hour, I know we started at. And I'll always remember this because it's just kind of in my brain. In between my house and work was a gas station. And I will always remember that because it was like I'd gotten a car, and I'd always stop at that gas station because gas was 99 cents a gallon. So let's think about that, okay? If gas back then was $1 a gallon, okay, and the minimum wage was, well, let's just say roughly $5, okay? So for 1 hour's work, I could buy 5 gallons of gasoline. How much is gasoline today?
$5.
For 5 hours work, it would be $25 for that, $25 an hour. I can buy 5 gallons in an hour. So it really has. I mean, granted, gasoline isn't a really good barometer on that.
Right.
But at the very least,
you can use it as a good example, though.
At the very least, we're talking about the difference, between, right now the minimum wage, nationally at $7.25 and $8.25 in Illinois right now, and a lot of fast food workers. Last week they, all around the country there were demonstrations.
Right.
The fast food retail workers are kind of demanding like a $15 minimum wage.
I don't think that's...
It'd roughly be doubling the minimum wage. It might be a bit much. It might be asking for a lot. I think it's reasonable, but
I think so too.
I think it'd have to go up in kind of an incremental thing. At the very least, you kind of go from $7.25 to $10.
Right.
And then to
like
$12.25 next year, and then $15, something like that. The other thing is also when you think about it, companies will, if you're paid a living wage, if you're paid okay, you'll stay with a company. So you would think that there's a certain cost savings that companies would have. One, you have less turnover. And turnover really is expensive to companies because you're talking about training and lost productivity, and also you get happier employees. Right,
absolutely. Yeah. And I don't think you were just talking about maybe the compromise of not $15, maybe $10, maybe $12.25. Like you were saying, this is a kind of a service-oriented society. Which means you pick up a lot of flack from customers.
Yeah.
So at least pay them for the flack they got to pick up from the not so nice people that, come into your establishment, and want to say, oh, you didn't make my burger right, make it again, or my fries are cold, or this pizza's cold, anything like that. It's at least pay them for that. Granted, you probably should work at this place and then try to move on and find something else to do. But, the way the economy is now and what they're getting as minimum wage.
It's a bizarre thing, though, when you think about it, though. I mean, what companies? I mean, how many companies? I guess ultimately it depends on training, right? Because why would a company not pay their workers enough that basically they would want to stay with the company for like a career?
Because a lot of these big time people, they don't care about that.
Well, I guess the ultimate idea is that, well, anybody can come in and work at a McDonald's. But it's interesting when you note that things like, Starbucks has always offered or actually given free insurance, health insurance to its employees.
And they're making
and the baristas
fistful of money.
The baristas are making a little more than minimum wage as well. And Starbucks is not it's kind of a successful company.
Yeah.
I think ultimately it really just has to go with how much of a profit is enough for these companies. And when you really are squeezing the people who work for your companies, then you get them doing things like posting videos of them, putting their wangs on a Subway
sandwich bread,
or
that
licking,
was classy.
Licking
the Taco Bell
shells,
classy,
things like that. I mean, you basically get what you paid for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they don't really care about. I'm not saying that they don't. Some companies do care about the people who work for them, but a lot of companies just care about that bottom line.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, I wouldn't mind paying, instead of, the $1 menu, it being, the $2 menu, if ultimately we're talking about that the prices have to go up at every place,
Yeah.
And that would be the key for the minimum wage type thing.
Right.
If you force it upon companies and they have to do it, then every company has to do it. And then so McDonald's and Wendy's and Arby's and Burger King, they all have to.
Right. I mean, and not only just those places. I mean, anywhere where $7 is being paid. We're not talking about just the restaurant.
Sure.
We're
Kmart
about
and Target and
Walmart,
Macy's
and any place like that.
Yeah.
Come on and go up. Yeah. People deserve a decent wage if they're going to work.
Yeah,
for you,
I think ultimately this is something that's long overdue. Thanks for listening to the John and Alicia Show.